But even if you believe in the Big Bang would lead you to believe in God, actually. Because how can you have matter and energy come from nowhere? How can they compress themselves into a singularity and expand? How is that possible?
I haven't done enough research on this.
No, but science cannot answer that question. Because science says, at that point, our laws were infinite. Everything was infinite. So we cannot measure whatever was happening that time or before.
Yeah.
So science is limited. Science cannot know everything. It's only limited to the physical reality, that which you can study, put under a microscope, etc. So if science is limited there, and that's not a question of the physical anyway, it's a question of a metaphysical thing. What started the whole physical existence, the whole reality that we live in? But I would say to say I don't have an answer to the question doesn't mean there is no answer to the question. Would you agree? If you believe in science, you should believe in cause and effect.
No, I think there is an answer to it.
Okay, sure. So, do you agree that you cannot have something from absolute nothingness? No matter, no energy, nothing. Absolute nothing. Can you have something from that?
I guess you can.
You can have something from absolute nothingness. Which scientist would say that?
I don't know, but
there's no scientist on earth that would posit that, you know?
if you're saying there's a creator,
yes.
Where did he come from?
Okay, that is the always question that people ask. I'll tell you, look, if we say someone, I haven't answered the question, it's an easy question. If you have someone that created God, you will have to posit the same question, who created God? And then you will go into something called infinite regression, okay? And then nothing can exist. So the fact that we exist today means that there is no infinite regression. It means there's something eternal. So that proves God. So you just proved God.
It's very good.
So we need by necessity something eternal. There has to be something eternal always existing.
You're very convincing. Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Everyone to convince that already been created because it's rational.
I think physics is too perfect. Physics is like...
She's right. She means like basically how the laws are. Like there is an interesting book written by Martin Rees. It's called 6 Numbers. You can read it. It will show you an infinite amount of numbers and how the equations in the universe are so precise that if anything was different, there would be no universe. Like for example, you have atoms started like 300 years after the Big Bang. Like if it was any different, you cannot have a universe. Then on top of that, you can add life. That is even more complex. It's called the fine-tuning of the universe. So the more you look at the universe, you know it's impossible for you to have these precise measurements without a determiner that determines everything the way it is. You know, when you leave things, they go into chaos, not order. Just leave your room for like 2 years and come back, you know? It's not going to be a perfect organized universe, right? It's going to be a chaotic room. The more things tend, this is what they call entropy, right? The more you leave things, they tend into becoming more chaotic. They don't become more organized. But when you look at the universe and how millions of years pass, it's just even more organized with time. You have these very specific laws that run the universe the way it is. And I don't think you would apply this standard to anything in here, in this life or in planet Earth. Anything that is very complex or has laws, you will always assume that someone has made it, even if you didn't see it. But when it comes to the universe, why is the standard different? Okay, let me ask you this. Have you seen the person who made this table?
No, I haven't.
But why do you believe someone made this table?
It seems rational. It seems okay.
Why?
It's logical.
So it's not logical someone made this.
People made tables.
So it's not logical that this far more complex entity was created by something, but it's rational to say this simple table is, even though you haven't seen the maker? Even if someone made another table, they haven't made this table. Why do you assume this specific table is made?
That's good. That's good.
By the way, probably you would never know in your life the person who made this table. I know it's custom made. It's not even from a manufacturer. So you can never find who made this. But you still believe it. For example, you believe someone made the pyramids, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but we've never seen anyone build a pyramid. So why do you believe someone built the pyramids? You will say because it's so complex that it shows signs of design. So my intuitive rationality as a human being lead me to the conclusion it has to be a maker. I'll say we apply the same logic to the universe, which is far more complex and far more beautiful and far more precise. I'd say that's the only rational conclusion you can come to.
That is rational. But I have a question. What do you think about Christianity and all those Buddhists?
Excellent question. I would say with with very basic research, you can come to the conclusion, you can exclude many religions. You talk about Christianity, for example. When you read the Bible, it will be enough for you to come to the conclusion this cannot be from God. The text itself first is not preserved, meaning you don't know who wrote it. It's written by unknown people. When you say the Bible, which Bible do you refer to? They have different Bibles. They have 66 books, depending on the denomination that you will follow. There's only one Quran. Every Muslim believes in the same Quran. But if you go to Christians, Protestants will believe in 66, Catholics will believe in 72, Orthodox will believe in 82, Ethiopian Orthodox will believe in 88. And they will disagree that these extra books are from God. Some will say it's from God, some will say it's not from God. You start reading the book itself, then you start finding contradictions in the information within the book itself. You read how did Judas, you know Judas was the person who killed or person who told the Roman Empire about Jesus, a traitor essentially. But there's two ways he dies in the Bible. You can only die in one way. In Acts it says he was walking and he tripped over and then his belly gushed open, right? And then if you go to Matthew, it says to you that he hung himself. He was in a church, he threw the coins and he hung himself. So how did he die? He cannot die in two ways. Right? So the more you read the Bible, you come to these contradictions that will always disqualify these ideas. You go to the Hindu scriptures, I don't even need to even start talking about that, right? When you talk about the Hindu scriptures, they'll tell you the sun has 7 horses pulling it. They'll tell you that the earth is held by a bull with his 2 horns. The information you read there is sufficient. They'll tell you, you know, you have this monkey god. I'm going to make you go into stories, you know, what the Hindu scriptures say. You give me one rational religion that would actually, other than Islam, you wouldn't find anything. You know, the Quran is very interesting. Why? The Quran itself challenges people. It says if this is not from God, right, then find the contradiction in it. When we see contradiction, by the way, there's 2 types of contradictions. Internal within the text, like I was telling you about Judas, and then external to the reality, like I was telling you about the Hindu religion. Like if God made this universe, he's not going to be thinking there is 7 horses pulling the sun, right? Because he made the sun. So this has to reflect whatever we see. And when you see the Quran, the information within it, we're learning about it today. I'll give you a few examples since you talk about science, right? A few examples there. You know, Muslims actually developed the new scientific method that you're using today. There's a scientist called Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham in Andalusia in Spain. He developed the modern scientific method that we use today, which is to study physical world through experimentation, repeatability, and falsification. That was what he studied. His book, Optics, is how we're able to use cameras. The only way you can use a laptop is algorithms. You know, algorithms is a translation of Al-Khawarizmi, which is the Arabic Muslim name, by the way. He developed what algorithms are, and people don't know that it's even a translation of his name. So the only way we can even use computers or laptops is because of that. So the Quran, for instance, will talk about the universe. You know the universe is expanding?
Yeah.
When did we learn that? You know?
I guess Einstein.
No. Very, very recently, like in the 1900s, there's a person called Hubble. And then he developed this Hubble telescope, this big map.
Yeah.
And then we could observe what it was called redshifting, which is the wavelength of the galaxies. Galaxy stretching itself, you know? Fabric of space is stretching. They call it redshifting. Now, that is mentioned in this book 1,400 years ago.
It's mentioned.
Allah says in the Quran, we've constructed these heavens with power and we're expanding it. That's 1,400 years ago. We don't need a Hubble telescope, you know?
Okay.
The Quran talks about, do you know the baby in the mother's womb? Talks about the stages of embryology, how the baby develops. There was an embryologist called Keith Moore. He passed away. And he's Christian, he's not even Muslim. But he said that this book has to be from God, or Prophet Muhammad has to be a messenger, because whatever the description is in the Quran is what I see with the microscope with my own eyes. I look at it and I see exactly what the Quran is describing is what I see with my own eyes. Like, for example, the Quran describes the stages. That it starts first as blood and then it moves into something like, the Quran uses the term leech, alaqa. And you know, a leech has 3 functions. It hangs, it sucks blood, and it has a certain shape. The embryo exactly looks like a leech, hangs and sucks blood in that stage of embryology. How would the person who ever wrote this 1,400 years ago, no microscopes, no telescopes, no technology, no satellites, how would he know this? How would he describe it with one word that perfectly describes the function of the embryo at that time? So, when we're reading the Quran, like, we do not have any doubt this has to be from the Creator. Because the knowledge it reflects, it's impossible for it to be from anyone. And by the way, that's one type. Like, for instance, the Prophet told us about the future. He said that 1,400 years ago. He said, for example, that you will see the barefoot Bedouin Arabs. You know the Arabs? It's Bedouin nations. He said you will see the barefoot Bedouin Arabs competing in building the tallest buildings. Where is the tallest building in the world today? Do you know who's other people competing with them, which is other Arab nations actually? And do you know they were Bedouin Arabs? Do you know what a Bedouin Arab is? People who live in the desert, don't have civilizations and buildings, you only have tents and camels. And Dubai 50 years ago was a complete desert. You know how it changed?
I have guessed that some rich people came up and
How did it become rich?
oil.
Exactly. Do you know the Prophet said the earth will puke its treasures and money will become abundant within you? Okay. How would he know this information?
I guess he has to be God.
No, but this is the thing. He never said, I am God. He said, I'm sent by God, right? So this information has to come from God, I agree. But then the Prophet says, God reveals this information to me. So unlike Christianity, we don't believe God is a man. We don't believe any human being can be God. We're all limited in our own ways. We're all deficient. But the Creator who created everything is not like man or a woman or anything. Creator is one, independent, doesn't have children, doesn't have parents, and there is nothing like unto him. That is a description that Allah gives to himself in the Quran. So Prophet Muhammad said, I am sent by God. God sent me. He reveals this information to me. There you go. This is a revelation from God. He never said, give me all your money, give me all your women. That was not the purpose, ever. The purpose was connect people with God, worship God alone. The Prophet even told the people not to overpraise him. You know, it was never about him. He said, don't overpraise me like the Christians overpraise Jesus. And they turned him into God, right? They started worshiping him instead of worshiping God. So, for a sincere person, I don't think it's difficult in any way, shape, or form for someone to come to the conclusion that Islam is from God.
Thank you.
No problem.
It was great talking to you.
Yeah, just investigate what I said, and then what you can do is do your own research on your own time. You'll come to the conclusion that what I was telling you is very basic, it's very simple, easy. You took the Quran, right?
Yeah.
All right, give it to read.